Greetings and welcome. I am the Dead Aussie Gamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas, and strategies for playing and running monsters in your tabletop role-playing games. Today we will be exploring the Midnight Lords, the one whose gaze can turn the softest of hearts to butter or the strongest of heroes to cowardly children. The hunter of the hunter, the vampire. G'day guys and welcome. Yes, that's right. We are going to be talking vampires today. My name is Michael and I've got a problem. Yeah, I do. I love vampires. I really do. I love them. Ever since I was a little kid, I don't know why I really got into it. Interview with a Vampire, Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know, the story of Jonathan Harker and Abraham Van Helsing just captured me. And for the longest time, I wanted to get into cryptozoology just to learn more about vampires. With that in mind, I have actually filmed this video a few times, and each time I've produced a several-hour video. But that is not what I'm trying to do. This is not a lecture on the ins and outs and specifics of how vampires work, because vampires can be found across a number of RPG systems. Every system has a somewhat unique spin or take on them. If you play Pathfinder, for example, you may find that the rules for a vampire and how to conquer one may vary from that of Dungeons & Dragons, and vary still again from Savage Worlds and, of course, White Wolf Games. Which, by the way, if you finish watching this video and you haven't heard of those things, go and look up White Wolf Game and Savage Worlds. Best vampires! Alright, moving on. We're going to be looking at a few very quick, short, sharp things. We're going to be exploring the traditional European vampires and how to use them in your narrative. We're going to be taking a look at basically how to build up a game in which a vampire is the central focus. And lastly, we're going to be going through some voice acting skills for you to be able to portray a somewhat European or Romani vampire in your campaign. Well, Slavic vampire, should I say. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So what do we think when we think a vampire? Well, some of the traditions of a vampire often stick no matter what incarnation you find them in. Their thirst for blood, the ability to change into animals or creatures, their aversion to holy symbols and garlic, and of course, their extreme vulnerability to sunlight. All of these things are what make up a vampire's lore or tradition. When you apply a vampire to a narrative, it's important to remember that discovering this lore, that figuring it out, is equally as important as having a battle with a claw and tooth. One of the things I've always found interesting about the old stories about vampires was the absolute effort it went into the murder mystery side of the adventure. Vampires have a whole bunch of secrets and traditions and abilities and powers that can give them advantages against those who come unprepared. So often you'll find stories about vampire hunters who have trunk loads filled with weapons and tools and items for every situation that they might find them in. They investigate hard on the victims so that they know if they're coming up against a vampire or perhaps some other manner of creature. This element of the game is important to hang on to when you play a vampiric campaign. While your vampire is going to be great and a lot of fun when you get to the battle, and there are tons of strategies that you can use by dominating your enemies or by using confusion to disrupt their ranks, summoning animals, or even transforming into an animal themselves. While those are really cool and interesting, it's the investigation that hooks them in, that builds up the strength, power, ferocity, and fear surrounding your vampire. If you simply threw a vampire in willy-nilly and they simply just got into a fight, then you kind of lose out on that power. Because whether or not we as GMs like to admit it, we build encounters with the intention of our players succeeding. Thus, if we throw in a vampire, we need to have some idea that the players will succeed. Whether it's they survive the encounter or whether or not it's they defeat the vampire itself. In both scenarios, however, if done without the proper setup, the vampire falls a bit flat. So, to that end, what narrative bits can we use to build up our vampiric campaign before we even meet the vampire? There are two predominant fears that every vampire taps into, whether or not it's a Chinese vampire, or if it's a Vitala, or if it's a Nosferatu. All vampires explore the idea or the notion of the wilderness returning to civilization. Ever since people began to build up cities and create houses, there was always a fear of the dark, the development of lights and torches and campfires. Ever since those eras, we have believed that these things have been able to protect us from the things that go bump in the night. Vampires are a challenge to that. They are something that, unlike a bear, right, which you will hear running through the streets, your walls and doors will offer you protection against a bear trying to break into your house. A vampire, however, uses its silk-like words, uses its supernatural abilities, and can sneak into the bedroom of even the most wealthy debutante and actually bypass, slaughter the most trained soldiers and simply pluck a victim at will, like a man at a grocery store, or whatever they call people who pluck apples from an orchard. Boom, and there is nothing you can do about it. The walls do not keep you safe. The lights do not protect you. And what do you do then? This fear is where vampires gain their strength, and the vampire in your narrative will gain that strength too. What you need to do is make them understand this, that they are not safe, even when they think they are. I've used this a few times where, say, my players have been at an inn or a traveling, caravan, and they've looked into the reflection of a mirror and they have seen something written in blood. They saw no one enter, they saw no one exit, but something has been written. It could also be something along the lines of building up a hero only to have them either turned into a vampire spawn or disappear entirely. The more you build up a vampire hunter, the more scary a vampire appears, right? If you have this huge guy, big muscular dude with a crossbow and a big sword, and you fight a whole bunch of vampire spawns, which are like, throwaway minions compared to vampires, and this vampire hunter slays 6 of them while the PCs nearly die on 3 of them, and then have this group join up with the vampire hunter, head towards the big Dracula castle. The doors swing open as the hunter walks in. A few moments later, Dracula walks out, clutching in his hand the severed head of the hunter, which he throws at the feet of the party. What do you think of this dude? I mean, my God, you don't even need to throw the first punch before you begin panicking. You just oh my God, what are we expected to do here? This thing is just beyond imagining. By the by, I always use this kind of tactic for Strahd, especially because I love Strahd. He's a champion of vampires. Every time someone brings up Twilight, I bring up Strahd. So that is what a vampire is. Vampire is power. Vampire is, breaking those conceptions of what is safe. Traveling with a vampire hunter is safe? No, it's not. Staying around the torchlight is safe? No, it's not. Being in your room, locked behind a door with the windows shuttered and a bed pushed up against the walls, is that safe? That's right. No, it is not. So, with this in mind, that's kind of how you want to build your campaign. You want to build it based on that. Where you want to start your story, because obviously you don't want your vampire to simply just be there and be killed and moved on, you want to start with rumors, with just kind of talk, the town people, speaking of several people going missing, or from the dead rising, noticing, hey, did you know that Jill died last week? Yeah, she was murdered, wasn't she? Yeah, down an alleyway. I saw her last night. What do you mean you saw her? Oh yeah, she was in the alleyway. It was the strangest thing too, she was there with the O. Jenkins boy. The O. Jenkins boy? He's gone missing too. I haven't seen him in days. Oh, well, all of these things are great ways for you to be able to build up and expand on the notion of this investigation. They then go up and ask these people, well, who are these people? What was their relationship? What happened here? Where are they buried? Let's go exhume a corpse. That element of the story is still part of the adventure. And if you've read Bram Stoker's Dracula before, you would know that was 90% of what made the game special. It was this idea that that this group of people, these ordinary people, began searching for answers, began searching for who this vampire was. Okay, from here, what I want to look at now is basically how to portray your vampire. Now, there are so many different types of vampires out there, and I am not allowed to talk about them because I don't have 2 hours to make on a video. But I will mention at least a couple of them. Vampires do not necessarily need to be Slavic. They don't need to be your typical kind of vampire, like, big cape and noble outfit. Vampires can be bestial, animalistic. They can be the Jiangshi, which are the hopping vampires. They could be Nosferatu, which are bold, ancient, withered kind of creatures. They could even be the Vitala, who are these kind of evil children who are kind of sort of crosses between, like, Revenant and the thing from The Grudge. All of these creatures, vampires vary as much as people do. They are, of course, a template, which you can apply to any creature. You have a beholder, you can put a vampire on it. If you have an illithid, I don't see why an illithid couldn't be a vampire, or even a giant or a dragon. Vampirism is as diverse as the people that contract the strain of vampirism. So when you portray their accent, make sure that you look at something appropriate. The most common one that people like to portray is, of course, the traditional Slavic type of vampire. Now, the Slavic accent is actually incredibly difficult to do, and it's very hard to do it without sounding like, your typical, I want to suck your blood, blah, blah, blah. It's very hard to not fall back on that. For me, when I was actually practicing the Slavic accent, I was actually practicing it for a different character, which I just found seemed to work super well for vampires. To do it, what you need to do is you need to start by understanding the Russian accent. Now, the Russian accent is a lot of rolling that seems to come from the back of the throat, up through the roof of the mouth, and then over the tongue. At no point should really you be catching much air around the bottom of your mouth or under your tongue. So as you roll accent forward, you lower octave, try to get deeper voice, break up sentence, so full sentence structure, not always important. When you roll voice, make sure tongue licks top of mouth when you want to break up your words. So, as you speak in the Russian accent, these sound very harsh, very round edges with very sharp sides. Words like this, you want to then smooth. So as you start to smooth your accent, you start to become a bit more suave, a little bit more European. You still pass above your tongue for many of the words, but you don't necessarily force those words to the roof of your mouth. Instead, you simply pass it over your tongue, making sure your tongue is not pushing up. So Russian is about pushing up, Scandinavian is about leaving it where it is. Next is your words, or should I say words. Then you start to use certain words. You want to make sure that you reach into another part of Europe, which is, of course, Germany. With Germany, a lot of your words, a lot of your words are built around W's becoming W's, and basically from there I can't keep that accent up all day. Basically taking those accents, basically taking those words and making sure that they sound like they have that flick. For me, I make sure I roll my R's and I just change the W's to the V's. That's pretty much it. From that point on, anything extra you learn is fantastic, and I highly recommend go and have a look at some of the Slavic accent videos on YouTube and stuff, because they are really a great source of inspiration for any kind of noble vampire. The next level, moving on from that Slavic kind of speech, is the animal, the beast, the creature vampire. When you do this, and fair warning, this can actually hurt the throat a bit. So lemon tea, ginger, honey, those are excellent combinations to kind of practice with. But what you want to do is you want to force your vocal cords to resonate. And to do that, you just force a bunch of air through it and sound out the words. And that roar, that's that bit resonating. So I usually use it for my Dr. Claw.
Next time, Gadget.
But if you want to use it, I often use it when my vampire gets angry or agitated. I believe I said, sit
down.
You say you killed the old man. I must say, I find this disappointing. I'm afraid
I will have you join us.
No, sorry.
I will have you join us for your insolence.
So, yeah, that one's a tricky one. I highly recommend keeping a tea or something to drink. Nothing fizzy, nothing sugary, because that'll gum up that and it won't work anymore. If you are doing vampire spawns, a lot of people think vampire spawns are just little vampires, but for me, I always imagine them like vampiric zombies. With zombies, I always exhale when I groan, so when I do a vampire spawn, I inhale. Because for me, inhaling is more of a sense of vitality, so it just feels right. So, or over the teeth. And if you can suck it in and then sort of round it back out and over the teeth again, you can create that sound of like kind of a feral vampire.
The master will see you now. You smell delicious.
And that kind of salivating as well, like, you know, that all adds to it. Because like when you're a feral vampire, you know, it's teeth, it's ferocity, it's animality. You know, be excited, speak fast, speak uncertain. Make sure you understand that sucking motion is that sense of vitality, them sort of pumping themselves up, them getting the blood flowing, as it were. Alright guys, well thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was insightful. Like I said, I had so much stuff to go into. I love vampires. So if you guys want to talk vampires, sorry I hit my mic. If you guys want to talk vampires, head on over to our Discord chat. We talk about all kinds of things, all role-playing games, strategies. It's also a great way to contact me. If you got any suggestions for videos or spotlights that you'd like to see, the link will be in the description below. Of course, I've got my Facebook page where you can join and, you know, catch up on a few articles that I've written and a whole bunch of other things. And of course, if you want to help us out and help support Dead Aussie Gamer in the coming year, then head over to our Patreon page. We've actually got a ton of stuff planned, including a trip to Gen Con later on this year. So with any luck, I will be down there running a couple of games for you guys. And obviously anything that you guys could do to help us out would be very, very appreciated. So, without any further ado, till next time, guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure that you game hard or die trying. Have a good one, guys.